Good afternoon. How are you today? I spent part of the morning dealing with clerks of court, and I found since the pandemic started that the clerks were very patient and tried to work out things because I've appeared remotely by Zoom and other devices rather than go into a courtroom. And I'm hopeful that someday in the months ahead, I'll be able to go back to a courtroom because you really can't phone this stuff in. You have to see the people, see how they move, see the expressions, and you can't in these Zoom presentations. Talking about presentations, how do we all see the election yesterday? Well, what does Kipling say? If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss and lose and go back to your beginnings, then, well, and there are a whole series of this, then you'll be a man, my son. So I have been through a lot of campaigns. I didn't run for governor. I did once run for Congress, which is the largest campaign that I personally was the candidate in. And on the night of the election, I was running against an incumbent, Frank Wolf, in the year that Mondale was running for president, and said he would raise our taxes. Not a good thing for any candidate to say. And an early precinct in Arlington came in, and based on the history, while I won that precinct, I won it by less than I thought I should have. And in that instant, I believed I was going to lose the general election. I got 95,000 votes, but it wasn't enough. So last night, some people were with Terry McAuliffe, and early in the evening, and somebody asked him what he thought was going on. And he said that it was going to be a bloodbath, and it was. He lost for all the, I forget, 1 million and change, but he lost by 60,000 votes statewide. And how did he lose? There are a couple of ways. One is that the lie that's told these days in politics to people too ignorant or passionate about hate and control rules the day. So in Loudoun County, which has been a Democratic hold in recent elections, they figured they couldn't win the county, but what they had to do was they had to get enough votes to suppress its effect elsewhere. And they did this by attacking the school boards and by attacking transgender students and lying about a program, critical race theory, suggesting it was being taught when it's not that kind of a theory and wasn't being taught. We also had an assault in the schools, and they played fast and loose with the facts of that case. And I know because I talked to the prosecutor about it, about the stuff that was public, and about what he did in an open courtroom. And a lot of it was also reported in the local papers. So one way this election was won was by deceit, by Youngkin, who was the Republican, I would call him the challenger, although there was no incumbent. And if there was an incumbent, it would be the former governor, Terry McAuliffe. Okay, so that's what they did wrong. What did we do wrong? We didn't answer it. And I've said this before, but I lean on Lincoln, who said this many years before I've ever thought it. And it was, when somebody makes an accusation, you have to answer it. You have to say that what these people are really talking about is not education, but a manner to be racist in our schoolrooms, to withhold information from our children, and to lead them to believe that America's never done anything wrong, when only by our errors and what we've done to correct it can we go forward as a nation that says its original purpose was that we were all equal and that we would treat everyone equally. But we have people in America, and Youngkin is one of them, who do not believe that is true. that should have been said. It should have been said that directly, or better. Similarly, about transgender people in the county where they brought this charge, transgender children have been bullied. There have been suicides. This is not a laughing matter, not to the individual, not to the family. And then the case of this assault, they tried to suggest that the assailant was transgender, but they overlooked the fact that these two young people had had sex, consensual sex before this third occasion when they had sex in the school. And transgender played not a bit in the case. Also, there is this magnificent writing called Beloved. And Toni Morrison wrote this book. I don't know if you've read it, but I hadn't, so I started reading it last night. It is amazing writing. It is as poetic and insightful as can be. The symbols are transcendent, are transparent to transcendence. And these guys say that, these guys being the Republicans, say you shouldn't read it. There are many more issues, but you can't win that argument unless you make it. You have to talk about the facts. There's some level of belief that people can't believe these things and don't believe these things, and as a result, they don't contest them. To tell somebody, for example, that critical race theory isn't in our schools doesn't mean anything, because they're being told that it's to make children think less of themselves, to think they're racist, to hate themselves, to hate America. You've got to answer that. You cannot allow that to stand. It's not true, and it's demonstrably false. So, how do we go forward? Well, I think of these people who sweated and worked hard and did speak the truth, even if not as effective as was necessary. In a nation that has lost its way by so many people who have no empathy, who do not respect others, who oppose science, ignore it, put themselves and others at risk. So we have to march forward because we can do nothing else. We have to say to ourselves, we won the election last year and we prevented Trump from being in charge. But the battle is not over. The war continues, and it probably will our entire lives. And the question is whether we can keep the level at such a place that we preserve and protect our nation as a democracy, rather than it becomes the autocracy that the people in Virginia last night voted for and will and have elsewhere in the nation. And people may say, well, what does that matter to me? Well, you'll find out. If the police attack a person of color, if Medicare is diminished, if a woman who needs an abortion can't get it, if you find when you exercise your speech you're punished for it, there are a million ways that our rights are protected presently, and they can be put at risk by people that have no respect for these rights, who think guns are more important than a woman's right to control her own body. So I think of a guy, Mark Herring, who was our Attorney General for the state. At one time, he and I talked about being in practice together. He told me that he was so busy doing politics it wouldn't be very profitable. He was very convincing in that regard. And each time he's run statewide, he's been very close. In other words, whoever headed up the ticket for governor had to have coattails to pull him along. And he had very short coattails the first time, a little longer the second. I don't believe there was a challenge, but this time he didn't make it. And he was an advocate for those who had no advocate. He fought for women's rights. He fought for people in the courtroom. He fought for a better condition. He fought for justice. Something that is ignored and hardly considered these days. So, what are we going to be fighting for? Well, I think the principal thing is to have our leaders, so-called, start talking about justice. Start talking about what's true. Start answering the challenges before it's too late. We have a year to the midterms. We have time to make a difference. And if we don't, we will reap the whirlwind. Because there is no question that these people, like those who ran the campaign in Virginia, they're coming to a neighborhood near you in the next congressional race, Senate race, gubernatorial race, even school board race. So, lick your wounds if you feel as I do that this was an outrage, and get ready in the days ahead to make a difference. All the best. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.